Hey guys, today I have two really rare German pistols. Both of these are test pistols, so stay tuned and hear their story. Today's video is a little bit difficult for me because I am not a collector of early Lugers or broom handles, but these are very rare pieces. They both came from the same person and they really do warrant a video. Now, my descriptions are going to be woefully short, but if you wanted to learn everything you need to know, especially about this gun, you could use this 3 volumes of the Borchardt and the early Lugers, a literal tome of information from Goertz and Sturgis. I have been reading through this. I'm only on volume 1, and there's a lot more information that I could learn, but in fact, when we listed this one, it sold right away. So the guy, believe it or not, he paid for it and expects to get it in the mail. So he wants it out tomorrow. I'm running out of time. So I at least want to show these to you and take a partial stab at explaining them because they're rare test pieces. But we're going to start with the broom handle. Okay, we're going to start with the broom handle, also known as the C96. Of course, that refers to the patent date of 1896. It was a revolutionary semi-automatic weapon that was being tested by militaries all over the world. And one of the militaries that tested this out, of course, was the German army, the German military, the War Department, basically. The German War Department tested these, and they started out with 200 guns in the serial range from 170 to about 425. Total of 200 guns were sent to the military for testing. And this serial number, it falls right into that range, and therefore, this was one of the test broom handles that was sent to the German military, and that was in 1901. So very early adoption. I wanted to show you a few of the features of this early gun, and then also some of the ways in which it was altered since it was first tested. Now this wasn't tested very heavily because the gun is in actually beautiful condition. You can still see the fire blue. There are parts that are unfinished. You can see here parts that are unfinished, the hammer. But I wanted to also show you a comparison with the regular production. This is early production, again, a test model, but not too heavily tested. Forget about this for now, and forget about the grips for now, but let me just get through it. These originally came in a 7.63, and that's the model that the military used. Up until a little bit later on, they thought it would be a good idea to add a 9mm. So they did make them in 9mm for the German military, and then later the Chinese made 45 caliber, but that's a whole nother video. So this is what you're used to, and if you'll notice, this is called the flat side, a flat side early broom handle. There you see the difference. You can see how it gets its name. This side has indentations, this side is flat-sided. I'll mention the Mauser logo in a minute. You see on the other side, it's also a flat side. Now this originally, those of you who are watching and already getting upset that this can't be real, this was added later. So the early test model would not have had the Mauser banner on it, the Mauser logo, that would not have been there. But this flat side, and also it's a large ring hammer. So you can see the difference. Everybody can see the difference between the small ring and there's the large ring. So those were production differences, 7.63 and 9mm. Also, the reason they added that is after the military was done with the testing, at some point they decided to sell them off, probably after World War I was over, so sometime in the early 20s or into the 30s, it was sold to agents in the United States who were buying up firearms for A.F. Stoger, obviously, New York. That's in the United States. So this was added, this was engraved on. In fact, when I rub my hand across it, I can feel the rough edges. This was engraved on there. They swapped out the grips. So originally, it did come with wooden grips with these striations on it, or lines on it. It did not have the 9mm because it wasn't 9mm. But it had the wooden grips originally. The grips are typically numbered to the gun. Stoger added the plastic grips. This has a logo, which is really hard to read. It just looks like scribble, but it's actually MW, which I assume is Mauser Works. And same on this side. And they also added the Mauser banner just because they wanted to be able to identify the origin, who actually made the gun. Both of these guns, again, since they went to the military, this is original, by the way. That does have the Mauser factory information. That was original, and it's also on our later piece. And they have some fire blue parts. You can see it very distinct here and here, but then also some straw parts, and they continue to do that into the later production. The rear sight is adjustable and goes from 50 to 500 very easily, 50 to 500, to elevate the distance that you're shooting. And you'll also find the serial number not only here, but also on the back here, 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 and here. So the serial numbers, and these are all matching numbers. The only other marking I wanted to mention is this imperial proof. This is an imperial proof, which means it was issued to the German army, as was this one. That's a firing proof, which is a crown U. And this one does not have the crown U, but this firing proof and then the military proof right here. If you were observant, you do see some extraneous markings, such as here. This eventually went to the British. This is an export mark, and this says not English made. So the British proofs, of course, are not original to the gun. They are added later, and it does affect the value a little bit. This one, you see the price up here. It's only for the advanced collectors. A lot of you would say, well, who cares? Advanced collectors love these kind of guns because they are very unique. So there were 200 tested by the German military, and of those 200, we don't know how many survived, but we do know that this is a very rare gun, right in the middle of the range of the test guns. And therefore, it's an important part of Mauser history. And for the advanced collectors, these are extremely desirable. Now, this one is even a little harder to explain. I did a short on this, which doesn't do it justice, because this is a very unique, again, piece of history. Obviously an early Luger, and it was sent to Springfield Armory, from what I can tell from reading the books, and I did read quite a few pages, probably went through about 100 pages, but there's a lot more to read. And it really did sell like within a half an hour, so it had to go out the door. It's leaving our office tomorrow morning, so I haven't really had time to give it justice. But I really think it's important to show to all of you, because I don't know when I'll ever get another GL marked, George Luger, initialed Luger. So come take a closer look, and we'll talk a little bit about this variation. Okay, so this is the Luger that we wanted to talk about. It's a very rare piece of history. It doesn't have the American Eagle crest, even though from what I've read, and by the way, this is in Sturgis's book, pictured, and the serial number is in Sturgis's book as one of the guns that went from DWM to the Springfield factory for tests. Now, whenever you say a test Luger, you think of one of these. This is the range for the 1,000 that were tested. There was 1,000 that went to Springfield Armory and were tested in, I believe, in 1901. They are all in 30 caliber Luger. And the Army, there's a long story that goes along with it, but basically I think the range disputed, but there's documentation for 6,100 to 7,100 as the serial range. 61 to 71. This is 77, which means this one actually has the characteristics of the test range, but it is an overrun, so it's after the official range. And all of these were sold as part of the Bannerman contract, where Bannerman bought them up as a retailer and sold them to the public. Now, when you find one in the test Eagle range, again, 6,100 to 7,100, and that's approximate. There's some that are found a little bit before, some after. They will all have the American Eagle symbol. This one has, well, you talk about white wax, this one has gold wax in it. So it has the American Eagle and the DWM sign. This one does not have the American Eagle, but does have the DWM sign. Also, it doesn't have some of the other characteristics. One of the characteristics is that it's numbered right here, the last two digits, 42 and 42. There's no Germany mark here. That's one of the signs of the test Eagle. But when we look at this one, first and foremost, it's 9mm. So the feedback the Army gave them is, we want a more powerful round. So They did not accept the 30 caliber Luger. Of course, George Luger didn't want to give up yet because he said, okay, well then we'll make you one in 9mm. Now, interestingly, it has the longer barrel. It comes in 9mm. It doesn't have the American Eagle stamp on it. It has a B suffix. So when I read the Sturgis book, it's Gortz and Sturgis, they specifically mention that there was a group of Lugers in the 10,000 range. This one is 10,066 with a B suffix. Were specifically presentation guns. They were special contracts, special presentations, and they were initialed. They weren't initialed by George Luger, but he was a marketing person and he put his initials, had that stamped on there, also had his initials stamped on the magazine itself. I don't know, I've not seen one of these for sale before, but I've been told that the magazine alone can sell for a couple $1,000s. So very rare magazine, very rare gun. It has some interesting characteristics. It's kind of a one of a kind. If those of you who are looking at it and say, well, it's not it looks like a 1900, but it's not a 1900 because it doesn't have a grip safety. It doesn't have a stock lug, either does the earlier contract. This one has a grip safety. Notice the thickness of the trigger guard. This has a thinner trigger guard. Again, 9mm versus 30 caliber. So there's a lot of unique characteristics of this than other guns from the same era. Notice the step down here on the trigger guard, and there's none here. There is no serial marking there. They are marked, the side plate is marked under here, and same with here, it's marked underneath. You may not be able to see that, but that's the last 2 digits. And then one marking that is particularly important for this variation, when I take it apart, I look inside the frame down in there, you wouldn't even notice it, but there is a Springfield proof or a Springfield marking. It's a double circle with a flame above it. It's poorly struck, but the only reason I know it's there and real is because it is published in the book in this specific serial range, and they all had that same marking. And again, George Luger didn't personally initial this and didn't personally present it, but it came from him, from the DWM, with him trying to get a contract. Not sure how many went that were in 9mm, but we do know that later on they said it still wasn't powerful enough, and so then DWM sent 2 45 caliber. Now those are considered the $1 million gun. The 2 45 caliber that went from DWM in Germany over to the Springfield Armory in testing, even in 45 caliber, they still didn't adopt it, and the rest is history because instead they adopted the 1911. Now, what time of frame was this testing done? Well, the test eagles, and again, this is outside the range, but it has the same characteristics. It's considered one of the test eagles, but outside the range. This was about September of 1901. I believe this was 1903 or 1904, so this gun came after this gun. I'll put it back together again. Actually, you can see some of the internal parts. It's all original finish. It does have 66 here. Also, in the middle toggle, you see the 66. Rear toggle, you see the 66. And of course, the back of the toggle, you see the GL marking for George Luger. Some people mistakenly say he personally signed these. He didn't. And yes, these are faked. Actually, Ian McCullum has a video about one that's faked, and he goes over ways, but it gets into a lot of minutia. And then we've already talked about the inside of this one. The hold open is not numbered, but this is all original finish. You do see 66 here. One other thing I'll point out, both of these variations, they are not numbered. Sometimes you'll see a Springfield bomb, or that little circle with the flame coming out. You'll see the Springfield proof mark, we'll call it. And this one is GL. This one is blank completely. This one is blank. Sometimes you'll see Germany marked, and those were added later because the Germany marked ones were made for export, and that was later. This contract would not have had any marking on it at all, as far as I know. I do recognize there's a lot more that I need to learn, and I need to keep reading. But as I said, I thought this was important to show you. It's an important part of Luger history, and I have a lot more to learn. While I was filming this, I actually took the two guns apart and I laid down the parts and I went to put it back together again, and I used the side plate from this and picked it up accidentally and tried to put it in here and it wouldn't fit, which is a story to tell in and of itself. These early guns, not so much later production, but these early guns were all hand fitted, and you get two sets of grips. They don't fit the two guns, and I didn't even try that, but I'm just saying often you'll find that these are hand fitted and they don't quite fit right, which is one of the reasons that ultimately the U.S. Army, Springfield Armory, did not accept the German Luger, even after getting 30 caliber, 9mm, and 45 caliber. They still rejected it because it was so intricate, so complicated, and so exact, as opposed to the 1911. Now, some of you are standing up in your seats right now and cheering like your favorite team just scored a goal. The reason being is many people are very proud, especially in the United States, of the 1911, the longevity of its service, the utility of it, just how well it works in mud and rain and sleet and snow. These guns can be finicky, especially in poor conditions, which is one of the main reasons the U.S. Army did not accept the German Luger into their arsenal of sidearms. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that one and learned something. I still have a lot to learn, I freely admit that, and as long as your comments are polite, I welcome your feedback. Now, there are people who get really upset about some of the pricing, and maybe it's just jealousy, but there are people who can't afford these, and there are people who have discretionary money, and obviously they buy them because we sold this one, as I said, right away, which takes me to Krieghoff number 1. I did that a while ago, and I got a lot of comments about it being overpriced. I'm not going to disagree. As a matter of fact, I am going to contact the owner and probably be sending it back. We did get some offers. We got, I thought, some healthy offers. I don't know if the person will accept or not, but sometimes the gun just goes back because it's worth more to the owner just because of the family history and the history of it and all the nostalgia. In the case of the Krieghoff, you'll know that there was a strong connection to his dad. But a lot of people hesitate to spend that kind of money on a gun. And guess what? I don't blame you one bit. So congratulations to the person who was able to buy some of these rare finds, and kudos to you if you can afford it. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel because I actually have another test Luger coming up that's even rarer than this one. So stay tuned.